there was a little debate that I heard on there about The Exorcist III being better than The Exorcist. This is something that I'm going to roll my eyes a little bit on this, okay? Because, and I put out this clip years ago that, okay, everybody says The Exorcist III is underrated. And as of, I think, a year and maybe 7 months ago, it was officially no longer underrated because it was in the horror, I'm the horror fan starter pack. And in that starter pack, you always had to pull out that card. The Exorcist 3 is better than the original Exorcist. And everybody was saying this. And it's a great freaking movie. I love The Exorcist 3. But my opinion, I think people forget how important and how amazing the first Exorcist is. So this would be my first little topic for you guys. And of course, there's no wrong answer if you prefer The Exorcist 3.
No, there
and
is.
I do think Sean Clark
There's a wrong answer.
Yeah, I think so too. But I think Sean Clark, he gave a really interesting answer because he said as an adult, he actually prefers Exorcist 3. But when he was younger, it was The Exorcist. So I'm going to ask Davey first. Davey, have you seen both The Exorcist 3 and The Exorcist?
Yeah, The Exorcist 3, like when I was a little kid, that came out when I was in like 3rd grade, and the commercials scared the living shit out of me as a child.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I've got a weird thing with religious demonic possession movies don't interest me as much as like a demonic possession movie like Demons or Evil Dead. For whatever reason, I like the wild. I don't like it when I don't know. I'm just not as interested when it tries to follow like more grounded, like real life kind of rules for whatever reason. I think The Exorcist is an amazing movie. Like it's really damn effective and everything. I don't get as much enjoyment out of it as I do from something like Exorcist 3, which is like more my speed.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's undeniable the impact and how important the original Exorcist is. I mean, it's like, and I think they're two pretty different movies too.
Yeah,
so to compare them,
this is a great thing.
Yeah, if they weren't both, I mean, I know the book from Exorcist 3 is just called, I think it's just called Legion. So he was forced, what's his name? William Blatty was forced to name it Exorcist 3 to tie it to the franchise. But it is a very like loose connection. So we wouldn't even really compare them if the studio didn't force him to call it The Exorcist 3. But yeah, both great.
I think it's the cooler thing. And I know it sounds like I'm picking on people that prefer Exorcist 3. I have some wild freaking hot takes myself, okay? I know this, all right? But I do think, and not everybody, but I think some people think it's cooler if I prefer Exorcist 3. But I think you can kind of compare the first Exorcist to Jaws with how iconic and how legendary. And it's almost like everybody talks about the first Exorcist. Everybody's seen the first Exorcist. It's sort of played out. And I almost wish I could go back and watch the first Exorcist for the first time, because if I could do that and I didn't know about the legend of the first Exorcist, that would be the true test, because I think that movie would literally shock the shit out of you. If you didn't know about it, if you watched it for the first time, some of the stuff, even still to this day, that happens in the first Exorcist is quite insane. And it's directed in such like an A-level top tier director way. And man, that movie really just sets it. I think The Exorcist first one really makes you feel more uncomfortable than The Exorcist 3. But to give full props to The Exorcist 3, I still think that's a 5 out of 5 movie. I've reviewed it. It is phenomenal. Both movies are top tier exorcism type films, but this isn't about which one is really, really better. It's more about, I think, this day and age and the perception of The Exorcist 3 and how it's like the cool thing now to, like, everybody talks about Exorcist 3 now. And I'll probably piss some people off, okay, including Christian, but that's okay. Nick, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, I get paid to piss Christian off, so
yeah, exactly.
Feel free, but no, I mean, I think you're pretty bang on with that. I would never make the allegation, and I know you're not either, but I just want to put it out there. I would never say that, like, the people that say they like it, it's only because, like, it's edgy to say that. But there are people that are that way. And that's really annoying. It comes across really disingenuous when people are like, oh yeah, Exorcist 3 shits on The Exorcist. You know, The Exorcist is so boring. It's, and I've heard that actually a lot. And I'm like, I just can't get behind that. The Exorcist is a movie that is a drama first, where horror takes place in a dramatic story. It's not a horror film per se. It is, but like the drama is the center of that movie. And, you know, you either can get behind that or you can't. The Exorcist 3 is a little bit more, I would say, of a straight up horror film in a lot of ways. Like you said, they're both great movies, but I also think it's just trendier to like it right now. Like, I think that's one of those movies right now that people are like, oh, I went and revisited this and it's so good. It's so good. And it's like, yeah, no, it's definitely really good. But like, guys, we're talking about The Exorcist, like the granddaddy of possession horror films. Like we're talking about a movie that scarred generations. Like, as cool as Exorcist 3 is, that movie did not scar nearly anyone.
No, it didn't scar anybody. It's great, but it didn't scar anybody.
Yeah, The Exorcist is up there with movies like, I actually make the argument that The Exorcist is the greatest horror movie of all time. It's not my favorite, but I think it is the best one. And yeah, that's just, it's something else. You know, like there's a Mount Rushmore of horror films that's on it. So Exorcist 3 is great.
I'd even say that I still think The Exorcist, and us three guys and people in the chat, most of us are like really heavy dug in horror fans. Okay. And we roll our eyes when somebody says, I didn't like it because it wasn't scary. Shit does not scare us. Okay. The Exorcist is in the top 5 scariest movies of all time in my book. It really is. Do I watch it and get scared? No, I don't. But I know what a scare looks like. And I know that movie, to the uninitiated, if they watched it and they weren't a horror fan, it would freak them the fuck out. Okay, I don't get that from Exorcist 3. If you're talking about the scare factor, okay, but I also think there's the newness factor with The Exorcist 3 because, guys, I'm an old geezer. I remember when The Exorcist 3 came out, it bombed at the box office. Not that matters. The Thing bombed, and it's one of the greatest films of our time. But you can actually compare Exorcist 3 with The Thing because Exorcist 3 kind of sat dormant for decades. It had come and it had gone, and nobody ever talked about it. Okay, even the horror fans that I talked to, crickets. Then all of a sudden, one day, a few years ago, maybe a decade ago, something like that, somebody started talking about The Exorcist 3. I don't know if it was maybe Shout Factory's release of it. I don't know what it was, but all of a sudden, somebody said, "Oh my God, this movie's amazing!" And then everybody that had seen The Exorcist umpteen times, it was the newness factor. Oh my God, this is so cool that this movie's been around since the early 90s. And it's kind of like The Thing. The Thing is one of the greatest horror films of all time. It sat dormant for decades. Nobody ever said anything about it. So, yeah.
Well, and then there was that director's cut that came out of Exorcist 3. And I think that lit the fire of people being like, whoa, this is... Like, even though people still appreciated the original theatrical cut, they're like, this is a superior cut that does elevate this movie higher than, you know, what we had previously thought. So I think there's a little bit of that there too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we can all agree though that The Heretic sucks. It's really bad.
Oh yeah.
That movie is horrible.
I tried to watch that movie last year for the first time in about 15 years. And I was like, this is dog shit. Like, I know why I haven't watched it in forever.
There's something about George C. Scott in these horror movies. I love him. I
love him too.
You know, Exorcist 3 and The Changeling, or like, you know, The Changeling's one of my favorite, like, if you want to call it a haunted house or like, you know, a soul seeking justice for what happened to them when they were alive. Like I found recently in the last few years, I really like those types of movies. Like out of nowhere, I'm like, this is one of my favorite subgenres of horror. And mostly like The Changeling kind of smacked me over the head. And I was like,
I think
damn,
The Changeling
I love
works
this
because it doesn't try. Like the scariest horror movies, they don't try to scare you. They let the story take over, and shit happens in the story that is just like, oh my God, is this really happen? Oh, it's happening.
Gut punch.
It's not, and I think this was a common thing, decades ago, where they didn't say, okay, now we got to insert a jump scare because that's going to scare people. No. It's like the first Jaws. I hate to bring up Jaws again, but when I'm into that story, I'm loving it. And then all of a sudden, when Hooper goes down in that boat and he sees that floating head come across the water, it works so well because it didn't feel like it was just planned out. it felt like, oh, by the way, it's gonna, it's the car wreck that you don't see happen.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing that a director has or they don't have. And in recent years, that's really become obvious to me with like the Conjuring movies when I think about it. Like James Wan is a guy that can do scares in like the most like mundane, inauspicious ways. Like you don't think something is scary, and James Wan can like make it scary, and you're like, what the fuck? Like how did that scare me? And then you follow that up with movies like The Conjuring 3, and then sadly how the fourth one looks like it's going to be just by the trailer. It's a director that doesn't have that kind of approach. They don't have that skill. So it's just like, I must scare you. I have to make you jump. I have to do. And it's like, that's just not, I don't know. Like you see that shit coming from a mile away. I remember the scene in The Conjuring where it's just like, dude, Lily Taylor's just, or no, it wasn't Lily Taylor. It's one of the daughters is just on the steps, and the dad's walking around the house at night, and the camera just pans up at the steps, and there's the daughter. It scared the shit out of me. I was like, this isn't even like supposed to be scary, and it scared the shit out of me because like he can like really just create a mood. I don't know, jump scare fest. Oh
yeah, and jump scares can work. They have to be well earned and they have to be well timed. It's like a fart joke in a comedy movie. Like they're not bad just because they're easy. It's just all about like putting it at the right time. But I think there is something to be said, like what you were saying, Nick, about making something that's like relatively innocuous or like an everyday kind of thing, making it scary. That's a very like Hitchcockian kind of thing, like making you afraid of the shower. Or like Black Christmas makes you afraid of the phone ringing, and the Changeling makes you afraid. A little red ball bouncing down the stairs becomes the scariest friggin' thing in the movie. And I don't know, there's something that's so just deeper, I think, about that, so much deeper about that.
Dude, the movie Arachnophobia made me scared of my bathroom just entirely. I don't like closing my eyes in the shower to wash my hair. There
you go.
I always like look behind the toilet and stuff. Like it's just that stuff that'll scar you for a generation, for the rest of your life. I mean, Jaws, everybody's scared. Like they don't want to admit it, but most people wouldn't want to fall off a boat in the middle of the ocean. You don't want that to happen.
No.
It made people afraid of the tub. Or of a pool, it's amazing.
Well, you were speaking of the tub. I immediately thought of the first Final Destination. It might not be the best and most inventive kill, but I think one of the creepiest kills is when that guy dies by hanging himself in the bathtub, and he's got the soap on there, and his eyes get all red. Because I think that one felt the most real. Like that's the one that could really happen. Even though it was a little extravagant, but
I don't know, what's her name, Miss Desjardins, in that movie. I think her kill in her kitchen is just like, that's terrifying because that's just like all like everyday stuff. She gets vodka in a glass in a mug and it cracks and then it leaks into a computer and then there's a fire in the kitchen. Everybody, like, I have never thought of a knife rack the same way, like a knife block. I'm like, dude, like what if I fell down and that shit fell on me? Like that is really creative. Like there's ones like Sean William Scott's death is like so fucking stupid, but like it's fun.
I just recently did a favorite Final Destination kills on the last Late Night with the Davey episode with a guest from the UK, and I picked that one, Nick, because I was like, it reminds me of O.J. Simpson's intro in the original Naked Gun, where he's just stumbling from like one pratfall to another pratfall. Like everything she does, things just keep on getting worse. So there's something like comedic, but also horrifying about that death in the original Final Destination. Love that one.
Love it.
Well, hello there. You just watched an outrageous clip from the Hit the Bricks podcast. I really hope you enjoyed that clip. If you want to see more clips, you can click here or you can click here. And you can just have yourself a ball, all right? And also follow the Hit the Bricks podcast on Spotify as well. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful day.